I'm never more annoyed than when I'm scrolling on a website, specifically on mobile really, and a third of the screen is taken up by the navigation. Sticky navs are great for reminding your users what they can do, but if I'm scrolling down your blog post, you can probably assume that I'm reading and I don't want to see your logo and your sign up button. This is why so many websites utilize this tactic of hiding the navigation on scroll, then showing it again once the user scrolls back up. Scroll down indicates engagement, scroll up indicates disengagement. Let's learn how to do this ourselves with React and Framer Motion. To start, we're just going to need a navigation bar and some content that we can scroll past. I'm using a sticky nav for this example. Fixed navs are also totally fine. And then I'm just using some basic like lorem ipsum copy text for my content. Feel free to make your own nav bar or find a super dope one on my website, hover.dev, along with a bunch of other cool Framer Motion components. But assuming we have some kind of navigation and some content, we may begin. I've already got Framer Motion installed and I am importing three things. Motion, which is the main export from the library, useScroll, which is a React hook that allows us to get the current position of a page or element, and useMotionValueEvent, which is a hook that lets us listen to changes of motion values. So in our case, a value which we're going to receive from the useScroll hook. We can start by just making our nav into a motion.nav. We do this by prepending a normal JSX element, so in our case, the nav tag with motion and then a period. I just want to get the showing and hiding working kind of like separate from the scroll stuff, and I'll start by defining two variants via the variance prop to do this. These variants represent the different states that our components can be in, and then we can just reference them later by name. So in this case, hidden and visible are what I'm calling mine. You can provide any normal CSS selectors here, as well as some shorthands that Framer provides us. In my case, when visible, I want the Y translate to be 0, and then when hidden, I want the Y translate to be minus 100%. We can preview this by passing the variant names to our animate prop. So by passing in visible, we should now just see the same thing, so our nav stays visible. And then whenever we change this to hidden, it should then kind of pop off the page at the top. Yep, just like that. It animates a bit too fast for me though, so I'm gonna slow this down by passing a duration of 0.35 seconds to the transition prop, as well as an ease of ease in out, because it just looks a little bit nicer to be honest. And refreshing now should give us a slightly nicer result. So yeah, we'll see it kind of slowed down a little bit. I'm gonna base this animate off of a Boolean, which we're gonna use later. I'm gonna call mine hidden, and that's just using a use state, setting that to false to start. I'll just replace our animate string right here with a little bit of logic, which just says whenever this hidden state is true, it's going to go to the hidden variant, and whenever that is false, it's going to be the visible variant. To learn how we can show and hide this nav dynamically, we first need a way to actually figure out if we're moving down or up the page. To actually get this, we can use the useScroll hook from Framer Motion to get the current scroll position via the scroll Y value that it passes us. We'll need to actually listen to how this value changes as we scroll, so we can try first using a useEffect hook to do this. It's not actually going to work, but it is a good learning opportunity, and I am a good teacher, so I'm going to show you anyways. You are welcome. I'll add in just a normal useEffect, console logging the scroll Y value whenever it changes by passing it to the dependency array. If I take a look at our console now though, we're going to get a couple of logs whenever the page first loads, but nothing as I continue to scroll. This is simply because the scroll Y value isn't reactive state in the same way that normal React state is, thus updating it does not cause a call of our callback function for our useEffect. To actually listen to changes, we can use the .on method directly on scroll Y or on a motion value. We can then pass in a string that just says change, which is going to say that we want to listen to the change event, and then just a callback function which logs out our latest value. This whole thing will also return us a callback function that we can call later to clean this up. By clean this up, essentially I just mean that it's going to unsubscribe this listener, and all that we actually have to do to call that is by returning a function which then calls that function. And now we're going to see that as we scroll, this totally works fine. We could absolutely move forward with just doing this like this, but there is a slightly cleaner way, a slightly more concise way that Framer Motion gives us out of the box, so we're going to do that instead. I'm going to start by just deleting everything we just had and instead making a call to the useMotionValueEvent hook. The first argument to this is just going to be our value, so in this case scroll Y. Any kind of motion value here should work. And then the rest of our arguments here are going to be the exact same arguments that we would have passed to our onChange handler. So I'm saying I want to listen to the change event and then my callback function. And this should still work. So scrolling up and down, we're going to see that we still get our logs, but now there's no need for that separate cleanup function because that's just done under the hood inside of the hook. The problem we still have though is that we only have the latest value right now, and we really need the previous value. If we had both the latest value and the previous value, we could compare those together to determine if we're scrolling up or down. And if only there was a way to get the previous value. And there is. It's actually very, very easy. Really quick, I'm just going to add some curly brackets here. And all that we have to do to get the previous value is to call the getPrevious method on our scroll Y. I'll add this to our logs really quick. And now as we scroll, we should see that we get both values. So both the current one and the previous one. Now for the easy part, which is just comparing these values together and performing our interaction. I'll remove this console log, and really all the logic that we need here is if our latest value is greater than our previous value, this means that we're scrolling down on the page. Thus, we're just going to set hidden to true. Else we are going to set hidden to false. False, much better. Definitely not required, but what I also find to be kind of good user experience is to also set a bit of padding at the top of the page. So right here, we're saying 150 pixels. This way, if the user just scrolls a little bit at the top, I'll actually show you what I mean in a second, they won't have their nav bar just completely go away. And with all of this, we should now have our finished result. So if I just scroll a little bit at the top, like, somebody might do on accident, nothing's actually going to happen. Our scroll bar is going to stay there. And then after I get about 150 pixels down, our scroll bar is going to go away. And then as I go back up, come back into view, scroll down, it's going to go away again, and so on and so on. And that is literally all that it takes. If you're interested in any more frame motion stuff, I've actually got a website full of pre-built animated UI components that you can check out for learning or actual use in your own projects, whether they're your projects or your startup or an agency, whatever it might be. There's a bunch of free stuff as well as a bunch of paid stuff. Lifetime access is literally only $27, no recurring subscription, anything like that, though the price is doubling next month, so do with that what you will. A like and a subscribe here also goes a long way, and that is all. Goodbye.